What's going on YouTube? This is Ipsec and welcome to episode 3 of the Golang for Hacker series. And this episode is going to be all about the functional options pattern, which isn't unique to Golang, but it's used much more frequently in Go because Go lacks optional arguments, overloads, etc. And at first, it's going to seem like this is completely overcomplicating something simple. But in the long run, I'm sure it will help keep your code cleaner and more maintainable. The easiest comparison I can think of is the functional option pattern is like creating an arg parse for functions in your program, because if you've ever tried to do arg parse without a library, you know what I'm talking about. As it starts off just fine, but then ends up being a big ball of spaghetti with all the if-then statements that you have trying to implement arg parse. Anyways, let's just get started. I have copied part of the net HTTP implementation out of the LDAP injector and made it its own project so we can just focus on the piece of code that's important. And then once we're done this, we'll go and add this into our LDAP injector. But the code I have here is relatively straightforward. We just have the definition of our net HTTP brute implementation, like method, URL, username, expected status code, and headers. If you did my previous 2 episodes, this shouldn't be new to you, right? And then we have the function where we're just assigning the implementation so we can start using it. And then we have main, and this is where it differs. All I'm doing is defining it and then printing out all the variables, right? So if I do a go run dot, we can see it's just going to print all this out. And if we started trying to use this, it becomes a bit cumbersome, right? Because we have all these arguments that we're passing in, and we don't know what's needed, what's optional, what's not. And also, it's only hard-coded to use the status code, right? This is just testing if a password is valid or not in the website, and we're identifying if it's valid just based upon the status code. But what if both invalid and valid password returned HTTP 200, and we wanted to look for a string on the page, right? Then we'd have to add a string up here so we can then define it, right? We could say like expected string. Then we have to also add it here. So we can change this. Instead of status code, this is just a string, and it's a string like this. And then when we go to use it, let's see, it's after the username. We don't want an expected string here, so we just kind of got to give it a blank value because there's no optional. And this really isn't intuitive, right? You could just pass in the whole object, but that's going to have its own set of issues, right? So if we did, let's delete all this. And then we just pass in, I'm going to do C for client. Doesn't really matter what that's called. Pass in this, and then let's just return C method like this. C URL like this. There we go. And now we can get rid of all of this. And then we just pass in this, and then define each thing here, right? So this does also works. And then we do go run. And what this allows us to do is just have like optional arguments, right? Because we don't have to pass in every parameter. But the flip side is how do we do default options here, right? And this like will just become a bunch of if-thens validating it, right? We'll put like if URL starts with HTTP, if the options in these HTTP verbs, there's just so many things that we'd put in this and it just becomes messy. It's also just like not intuitive to use a function this way, right? Because when I call this, I peek at the definition, I'm like, oh, I need this implementation. I go and look at the implementation. I'm like, huh, what do I need with all these, right? So this is going to be where like the functional option pattern starts coming into play. The first thing I'm going to do is just create a default, which isn't part of functional options pattern, but it's definitely going to be needed. So to do that, I'm going to first make HttpOptions more generic because I'm going to use this for other libraries like the fast HTTP one. So I'm just going to put all these options in a struct called HttpOpts. And then in our implementation, we're just going to say that contains HttpOpts. Awesome. For this, I'm just going to not pass in any arguments right now to keep it simple. And then we can say HttpOpts is going to be equal to the default options. And we have to create that. So I'm going to create func default ops. I probably should do like default HTTP ops to keep it all like in sync, but that's fine. The output of this is going to be the struct HTTP ops. So we can just return this and I'm only going to do the get. So here, the first thing we can do O is equal to defaultOpts, and then this is O, right? Yeah. Where is it erroring? HttpOpts? I don't know why that's erroring. Net HTTP brute implementation. What are you? Missing comma. Okay, that's a simple enough error to fix. And then here in main, we're just not going to pass in any arguments here. And we're going to see we have just something with get, right? If we change the default to be not get, let's do please sub, then go run, we can see that's now please sub. So let's put this back over to get. We can say the username, the default username, let's always get admin, but that's it for the default options right now. So what we want to do is be able to edit all these options. And this is going to be where it gets a little bit more complicated because we're going to go into function type definitions and higher order functions. You have to understand exactly how all that works because a lot of this is just copy and pasting things, right? So we're going to start off with the function type definition. So that's going to be a type. I'm going to do HttpOpt func and func HttpOpts. So what this is going to enable us to do is create a slice of functions that modify our thing. And essentially, we're going to create a bunch of setters to set variables. So we have that code. Now what we need to do is create the higher order function. So that's going to be, let's start with WithMethod. So we can do func WithMethod and then pass in the method that's like get, post, put, delete. And that's going to return a function. So since we're returning a function, we'll do return func, and we're going to pass in our current HTTP options. So we'll do a pointer to HttpOpts, and then we're just going to set it. So we'll do ops.method. That's not method. Ops.method is equal to method. Awesome. So now over in this new brute implementation, I'm going to do I think it's a Variadic something. But essentially you do 3 dots and then we can say what we want to pass in. And that was, I think, an HttpOption function. And now we have the HTTP options here. So we're going to loop over all the functions we passed in here. So that's going to be for function range ops. And then we can say that function, give it the pointer to our options, and that should let us set it. So if you understand this, pretty much everything's done. This is all downhill from here. If you don't understand it, hopefully after you do it a few times, it starts making sense. You can always leave comments. I try to respond and help people out. But now in this function, we can say WithMethod, and then I'm going to change this to post, right? And I'm going to put this on a new line. I think that's just easier to read. Go run. And now method is post. We can change that to IP. Go run. Method is IP. So this is pretty much it. And this helps code so much. And I know the video is pretty much just getting started, but we're going to go add these options for everything else because there's a few like catches, right? The first few are going to be easy. So we can do like func with, let's see, I'm going to do a expect here. So we'll do expected string. And then what do I want to call the string? Expected string is a string. And that's also going to be pretty much the same thing. And we can do func expected status code. And then let Copilot finish it off. So that's that. So we have string status code. Let's do username real quick because this is also the same thing. We can do func with username and then finish that off. So if we look at this method, we can do a go run. We only have post. The username was admin. So we can change this to be with username. And then we can say ipsec, run it, go run. You can see the username changed. the status code is currently 0. We can do a we did expected. So expected status code is equal to, this is an integer, so 200. Run this, and we have that there. So everything is behaving to plan. Now, when we get into the header, it's going to change slightly, but not that much. So we can do func with header, and then like that. So we're taking in the header and the value. And what's different here is because we have this map here, if this map isn't initialized, then the program will panic out because you can't assign a value to a nilled out map. I will show that here real quick. So we can comment this code out, go down here. We can say with header, and then we'll say, please subscribe. And this hopefully will crash, right? That's what we expected. Assignment to entry in nil map. So let's leave that code in. So go back here. We can do this. So now it's going to make that map if it doesn't exist. And there we have it. And this will also let us do multiple headers. So if we wanted to add 2 headers, we can just say with header again, right? So we can say, let's go back here with header and then say thank you, right? That's another header. Close that out and just do that so it's a bit easier. Go run, and you can see we have headers, we have please subscribe and thank you. So that's that. What else do we have to do? Probably some check options, right? So we have all this. We don't have WithUrl. We don't have a way to set the URL. That's crazy. Let's set that real quick. Let's do func with URL. And then we can say URL string HttpOpt func. And we could do this, right? But I think the URL is going to be a requirement. So maybe I don't want to put that as my functional option pattern, right? We could also say new HB brute implementation, and then put the URL here, URL string, right? And then default options, we can pass in the URL, and we can take in URL here. Or we can do default options and set it. That's easier. So we can do o.url is equal to URL. That's another way we can do it. And then here in our thing, we have to specify. So we can do HTTP ipsec rocks. And now we pass in the URL and then all the kind of optional things we need, right? That's generally how I like coding my things. If I'm just giving you like the functional option pattern, these are things that are probably going to be optional. Or I said function optional pattern, the function options pattern. But the things that are definitely hard requirements, I just put up front, right? So when we look at the definition, you see, oh, we need the URL, and all these are options we can do. We can change the request to a post if we want to. In the like documentation, you may say like the default, so it defaults to a GET request, things like that. But yeah, so that's that. If we wanted to check things, so let's say we want to create a check function because we don't want invalid HTTP methods, right? So let's create a check there. And you can just put the check in after here, after we do all the assignments. So we can do a func, and let's see, I'm going to actually say, let's do C. That's going to be a pointer to HttpOpts. And I'm going to create a function called validate, and that will take a nothing and return an error. I think that's right. And let's see, how do we want to do this? I'm going to check the verbs 2 different ways. The first way is going to be the more basic way, and then I'll show something a little bit more complex, right? So let's create a func, and we'll say check HTTP method. And we're going to take in the method as a string, and then return an error. And let's see, we can say the valid methods are going to be a slice of string, and we can say what? Get, post, put, and we'll do 3. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. We can just say for method range methods, and then we can do if strings equal fold. So we're saying if the method is equal to this, then we're just going to return nil because there's no error there. And if we get through our loop, that's going to be an error, right? Because it did not match anything. So we can do invalid method %s like this, and we just put method there. So that should be fine. And then invalidate, we can say if check HTTP method c dot method. Let's see, if error like this, then error does not equal nil. Awesome. Return error. And then return nil here. And then in this code, now we can say error is equal to c dot o dot validate. If error does not equal nil, return error. We have 2 things. So we return nil error. We have to go up here. This has to be able to return error. And then here, return the object and nothing. And then when we call it, we also have to have error there because it's capable. And if error does not equal nil, fmt printf. We'll just do print line on error. I think that'll work. Let's see. Does this work? Go run. That printed out. So let's change this post to something that is not valid. So we'll just change it to ip. And then go run. And we get invalid method. So that's the library telling us that doesn't work, right? So what was I talking about a better way to do this? Well, I don't like having this function be on its own. I'd rather just do this all inside of validate. And the reason why I did this on the own, because it gets somewhat complex doing something like this, right? But we can just really do a map lookup, which will make it a bit easier. And what I meant about this, like we could store like the value. So found, we could do var found is a Boolean. And then this could be found equals true. And then down in the function, say if found, right? That's not really that elegant and it's just ugly. But let's use a map lookup here. So I'm going to do a var valid methods, and that's going to be a map string. Did I do that right? No. What is it? I do map string and what is it? I don't do that. I think it's just struct like this. No, I'm getting ahead of myself. I think that's it. Yeah. And then Copilot can finish me. There we go. Get post put. That's fine. So we have a map here. I really hope that's right. And now with this, we're just going to say check if it's in it. So this would be the value that we extract, but we don't really care about that. We just care if it extracted, right? So we do that, and then we can say, let's just delete this rest of the line, valid methods, and I'm going to do a strings to upper, and we'll pass in ops.method like that. And then we'll say if it's not okay, then we will return fmt errorf invalid method. So I think that's right. So I think this is just the more elegant way. I think it's also a bit faster to do a map lookup than a loop, but that should be fine. Ops undefined. This should be COpts, I think. CMethod. Like that. There we go. Invalid method. That's good. So that is going to be how we can validate options. I'm not going to spend a lot of time creating that, but if I was creating a library, I'd put a lot more work into the validation. So with all of this, I think we're ready to start migrating this code over into our LDAP injector. So let's go back to our terminal, and I'm just going to copy main.go, and I'll put it in LDAP injector. I'm going to call it HttpOpts.go, right? And let's go into this, and I'm going to close this window, and then we can just open up Z again, and then start working on this. So we want to open up, HttpOpts, and then probably main and net.hp. These are 3 files we want. So first, I'm going to get rid of this func main, right? Because we definitely don't want that. And then let's see, this new brute implementation, I'm probably going to just copy that over top. So let's take this, go over to net HTTP. I can put that there. We will delete that definition. And then I'm also going to delete this new brute, go back into our options, and then we're going to take it from here. That looks good. Paste that, save it. And I think most of this is pretty much done. Save this code, save this code. And here is where we're going to have our main change. So we can say HTTP client error is equal to new HTTP brute implementation. The URL, we're going to do HTTP intranet ghost HTTP 8008 login. And then we have to start doing the options. So I'll do a comma here. We can say with method post, like that. And then let's see, we need a with username. This can be get t temp principal. Awesome. Then with or expect status code, expected status code 303. What's the next thing? Oh, we need the headers. So let's just yank these two, put with header like this. That's a comma. And then do the same thing here. And this can be deleted. And I think we're pretty much done. So if error does not equal nil, we can panic on this error. And you should only use panics when you're within main, because you never want your thread panicking. So only do it when you're in main. It's normally bad habit. Golang doesn't like you using panics. But hopefully this is just magically going to work. It's taking its time and looks like it does. So that is the function options pattern. There's one thing that I realized when I was doing this that I wanted to show that I didn't show. So let's show that real quick. To do that, I want to go back into my example. And hopefully I didn't delete anything here. I don't think I did. No, I didn't. We could have a thing like follow redirects. So we can create something follow redirects, and this can be Boolean. And because we're not going to pass an option here, we could simplify it. So I'm going to show both ways. So the easiest way, we'll say with redirects, I guess. I guess that's fine. Like this. And this is how you kind of expect it to be used, right? And here now we can go with redirects true and go run. We have an invalid method. Let's put this to be a valid one. Go run. We can see redirects is set to true. If I delete this line, we rerun it. I did not save. Rerun. It's false. But since we're not passing in any argument here, we could simplify it a little bit and just make this the HttpOpt func, I think. Let's see. How am I doing this? We'll do ops, HttpOpts, and I don't think we return anything. And we can just say ops.follow redirects is equal to true. Yep, this is it. And then for this, you could just say with redirects and not pass in, like you don't do the parentheses there because we're not passing in any extra options. And just by specifying that, you can see it gets set to true. So you could do it that way. A lot of people generally frown upon this, even though I think it's simpler to read, but it's just not obeying the conventions of all your other things. And Go really likes uniformity. So like, I would recommend doing it this way, right? There we go. That's undue enough. So that's how I would recommend doing it. So I think that's pretty much going to be the video. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care, and I will see you all next time.